Welcome, the Lord's chosen. The problem with being chosen is that everyone loves you after they can no longer use you. They didn't see it coming, did they? The same people who once overlooked you are suddenly acting like they always knew. It's almost funny how quickly disbelief turns into obsession once the results show up. You were once their topic of ridicule, the underdog they bet against, the quiet one they thought would stay in the background. And yet, here you are, not louder, not flashier, just undeniably seen. The truth is, when God hides someone, it's not punishment, it's protection. You were never behind schedule, you were in development. While others were busy performing for attention, you were being refined for revelation. Now the curtain's been pulled back, and the same audience that laughed at your silence is gasping at your glow-up. Suddenly your calm feels threatening, your peace feels provocative, your success feels like a plot twist they didn't approve of. What makes it even more ironic is that you didn't announce your greatness. It leaked. You didn't try to prove anything. Life itself became your proof. One moment you were invisible, the next, undeniable. You didn't climb through their system, you transcended it. Now, they're all standing there with that awkward expression, half awe, half regret, realizing they mishandled a divine original. See, the secret's out now. You've been that one all along. The chosen one they thought was just a phase, a fluke, a fragile dreamer. And the funniest part, you didn't change, their perception did. All that really happened is that truth finally caught up to timing. So buckle up, because when the hidden one is revealed, the entire narrative shifts. Let's talk about why the world's suddenly whispering your name, and why those who once ignored you now can't stop watching. Number one, they thought you were ordinary until their weapons stopped working. People only believe you're ordinary until their usual tricks fail to touch you. The same tactics they use to break others, gossip, manipulation, exclusion, silent treatment, suddenly fall flat when aimed at you. At first they laugh it off, assuming you're pretending not to care. But after a while, they notice something unsettling. Their control doesn't reach you. Their opinion no longer carries weight. Their games lose power. And that's when fear creeps in. You see, their strength was built on reactions. They fed on people's insecurities, on being able to provoke, to dominate, to control the emotional temperature of the room. But when you walked in with peace instead of panic, calm instead of chaos, their influence cracked. You refused to shrink or beg. You didn't explain yourself or play their emotional chess. You simply stood there, unmoved, aware, and awake. And nothing scares manipulators more than someone who sees through the fog. That's when the shift began. Their confusion grew because your resilience exposed the weakness of their tactics. They realized their weapons were only powerful against the insecure, not the self-aware. You were never competing with them. You were transcending the game entirely. They used to whisper behind your back, thinking you'd crumble under pressure. Instead, you absorbed the hit, learned the pattern, and kept evolving. Every attempt to wound you only sharpened your discernment. Now they call you different, cold, or too confident. But that's just code for uncontrollable. They can't categorize what they can't manipulate. They can't hate you properly because deep down, they respect the strength they couldn't break. You became living proof that peace is power, that silence is strategy, and that not every battle requires noise. They thought you were ordinary until their weapons stopped working. Now they know better, and they wish they'd never tested the armor they didn't understand. Number two, you were hidden, because exposure too early would have attracted leeches. Not everyone is ready to see greatness before it's fully formed, and not everyone deserves access to it. That's why you were kept in the shadows, moving quietly while the world rushed to declare what it thought about you. Your life wasn't meant to be a public show from the start. There was a process, a refining, a preparation that had to happen away from eyes that would only drain, distract, or steal. Being exposed too early would have been dangerous, not because you lacked power, but because your power would have drawn the wrong kind of attention. People often mistake visibility for value. They see someone in the open and assume they're ready for everything life can throw at them. But real influence, real destiny, grows in a place where it isn't measured by likes, validation, or applause. That quiet period wasn't a delay, it was protection. While others were busy proving themselves in every room, you were becoming untouchable in ways no one could replicate. You weren't supposed to be consumed by the shallow approval of people who couldn't understand the depth of what you carry. The irony is that once the timing was right, the same people who ignored you suddenly act like they were witnesses from the beginning. They want credit for being around while you were still small, but they were too blind, too distracted, or too late. Their jealousy, their whispers, their subtle resistance, all of it shows that they understood only after the fact. You were kept hidden not because the world didn't deserve you, but because they didn't deserve to see you at full force yet. Now that you've emerged, they're scrambling, trying to catch up, trying to claim they always knew. But the truth is simple. You were never meant for their timeline. You were never meant for their approval. Your season of quiet was a shield, a laboratory for greatness. By the time the world saw you, the leeches couldn't touch you, the critics couldn't sway you, and the doubters could only watch as what they ignored became undeniable. The secret was never yours to hide. It was theirs to miss until now. Number 3, their biggest mistake was making you their joke instead of their study. They underestimated you because they mistook silence for weakness, patience for passivity, and focus for simplicity. They laughed at your quiet moments, dismissed your ambition, and turned your presence into a punchline. That was their biggest mistake, believing that mockery could define your value or determine your trajectory. When they made you their joke, they showed exactly how little they understood the nature of true strength. Humor at your expense was a test, whether they knew it or not, and you passed it in ways they couldn't even recognize at the time. The problem for them wasn't that you noticed their ridicule, it was that it never affected you. While they were busy trying to get a reaction, you were observing patterns, learning the psychology behind their behavior, and refining yourself in silence. Every snide remark, every laugh behind your back, every attempt to diminish you became data, fuel, and motivation. Their laughter didn't shrink you, it sharpened you. It taught you patience, discernment, and the quiet art of moving without announcement. When people make others their joke, they're often too blind to see the truth. The one they're mocking is always paying attention. They record, analyze, and grow in ways that aren't obvious. They see the gaps in strategy, the cracks in character, and the weakness behind every mask. By laughing at you, they handed you insight they never realized you were gathering. What they thought was humor, you turned into wisdom. Now the roles are reversed. The joke has lost its punch, and the one they laughed at is moving with precision, power, and undeniable presence. They're no longer controlling the narrative, you are. Their ignorance has become your advantage. They tried to reduce you to amusement, but instead they created a sharper, stronger version of the very person they hoped to ridicule. They treated you lightly, and in doing so, they ensured that when the truth emerged, it would hit with unstoppable force. Their biggest mistake was underestimating you, and now the consequences are visible for everyone to see. Number 4, your presence started revealing intentions, faster than any word could. Something shifted the moment you stopped dimming yourself to make others comfortable. You didn't need to confront, accuse, or expose anyone. Your very presence started doing the work. The energy you carry now carries truth in it, and truth always makes pretenders nervous. It's not about arrogance or superiority. It's about alignment. When you walk in authenticity, it naturally creates discomfort in those who survive on illusion. Suddenly, the people who once seemed calm around you start to fidget, contradict themselves, or avoid eye contact. It's not you changing. It's their facade falling apart. You've become a mirror they didn't ask to look into. Your peace reflects their chaos. Your honesty highlights their manipulation. Your growth shines light on where they've chosen to stay stuck. That's why conversations that used to feel easy now feel tense. They can't lie the same way, flatter the same way, or pretend with the same confidence. Your energy has become a silent truth detector, and without you saying a word, people reveal who they are. This is the part of growth that no one warns you about. Your spirit becomes too loud for the fake to stay silent. It's not that you're judging them. It's that you've outgrown the frequency of pretense. You used to miss red flags because you wanted to see good intentions. Now you catch energy shifts without needing proof. The vibration of deceit no longer confuses you. It exposes itself in your presence. That's what real spiritual authority looks like. You don't go around calling people out. They call themselves out just by being near you. You no longer need to prove discernment. You are discernment. And while some people will quietly pull away, others will finally face what they've been hiding. Because your light doesn't compete, it reveals. You became the truth they couldn't keep pretending around, and that's when everything about your presence changed the room. Number 5, you outgrew the stage. They tried to bury you in. They thought they were ending you when they buried you, but they didn't realize they were planting you. Every insult, every setback, every closed door was supposed to break your spirit, yet all it did was push you deeper into your purpose. The darkness they used against you became your training ground. You learned how to breathe without applause, how to build without validation, and how to believe without evidence. What they saw as your downfall was really your formation, and that's what makes your rise so uncomfortable for them now. When people can't control your potential, they try to contain it. They talk behind your back, block your opportunities, and hope the silence around your name will suffocate your influence. But real growth doesn't depend on spotlight. It depends on depth. And while they were busy performing, you were developing. You took their rejection and turned it into resilience. You used their exclusion to master independence. You became so self-sustaining that by the time you resurfaced, you didn't need what they once withheld. Now your success doesn't just inspire, it unsettles. It reminds them that the dirt they threw on you only helped you grow stronger roots. The same people who thought you were done are now watching in disbelief, realizing they accidentally helped you evolve. They can't claim your glow because they weren't there when it was dark. They can't rewrite your story because your results speak too loudly. Outgrowing the stage they built for your failure means you no longer fit in the spaces designed to contain you. You've outgrown their approval, their expectations, and their limited imagination of who you could be. You didn't climb your way out. You expanded beyond the boundaries they tried to trap you in. And now your very existence reminds them. Burying a chosen one never kills the calling. It just deepens the roots until the world has no choice but to notice the bloom. Number 6, you became the evidence that divine timing isn't delayed, it's strategic. You were never late. You were being prepared. Every time life slowed you down, every door that refused to open, every season that felt like nothing was happening, it was all part of a plan that required timing, not speed. While others were obsessed with proving themselves, you were being shaped to sustain what they were rushing to reach. That's why your process took longer, not because you were behind, but because your foundation needed to be stronger. You learned the hard way that divine timing doesn't always look fair. You watched people with less effort seem to succeed faster, while you sat in silence wondering when it would finally be your turn. But what you didn't realize back then was that you were being built for longevity, not just recognition. God wasn't denying you, He was protecting what He placed in you. Because some platforms can't handle premature power. Some blessings, if given too soon, destroy the person meant to carry them. When others were chasing the spotlight, you were being purified in solitude. When they sought validation, you were learning discernment. Every no you received wasn't rejection, it was redirection. Every delay wasn't a dead end, it was divine choreography. You were being positioned, not paused. The silence that once felt heavy was really the sound of alignment taking shape behind the scenes. Now, looking back, it makes sense. The things that once frustrated you were actually protecting you from exposure that would have drained your essence. Timing wasn't working against you, it was working for you. And now that you've emerged, your life carries the kind of peace and maturity that can't be faked. You've become living proof that divine timing never misses. It only moves when everything, including you, is ready. Number 7. They wanted to study your fall, not witness your rise. Some people don't follow your journey because they support you. They follow it because they're waiting for the crash. They wanted to witness the failure, not the fulfillment. Every setback you faced became gossip fuel. Every silence you entered became proof in their minds that you were finished. They didn't cheer for you, they monitored you. But the outcome they prayed for never arrived. Because you didn't crumble, you evolved. You took every disappointment and turned it into discipline, every heartbreak and turned it into hunger, every loss and turned it into leverage. They thought your silence was defeat, but it was actually recalibration. They expected you to give up after the storm, but you came back sharper, calmer, and more dangerous to their assumptions. What they didn't realize is that pressure doesn't destroy the chosen. It distills them. You didn't escape pain. You refined through it. That's why your recovery didn't just surprise them. It exposed them. They had already written your ending, only to realize you were still in your prologue. Your resilience became their confusion. They don't understand how someone can take betrayal, loss, and exhaustion and still move with grace. It frustrates them because your peace disrupts the storyline they built around your downfall. They rehearsed your failure in private conversations, but now they have to watch your rise in real time. And nothing eats at a bitter heart more than realizing the person they counted out doesn't even remember being counted out. They wanted to study your fall, to analyze where you went wrong, to gather proof that you weren't who you claimed to be. But you turned the test into testimony. You didn't just survive what was meant to break you, you built a new standard from it. And now, every move you make is a reminder that they miscalculated your strength. They were waiting for the wreckage, but all they got was revelation, that you were never meant to fall, only to rise in ways they were never prepared to witness. Number 8, your energy shifted from needing to proving to simply being. There comes a point when you stop explaining yourself, not out of arrogance, but because you finally understand your own frequency. You've moved from seeking approval to living in alignment. You don't perform for acceptance anymore, you exist in truth. That shift is subtle but powerful, and people can feel it even if they can't name it. You used to want to be understood, but now you realize that understanding is a privilege, not a requirement. The peace you carry now came from letting go of the need to prove anything. This kind of transformation unsettles people who built their confidence on comparison. When you stop competing, you become untouchable, and that confuses them. They can't trigger you the way they used to. You don't defend your worth, you just are your worth. Your stillness has authority now, not because you're loud, but because you're rooted. You no longer chase clarity because you've become it. The storm in others becomes obvious when it stands next to your calm. What they mistake for distance is actually discernment. You no longer engage in meaningless noise. You don't argue to be right. You stand to be real. That shift, from needing validation to embodying peace, changes the atmosphere wherever you go. It makes people confront the parts of themselves that still crave attention, still need to prove, still fear being unseen. You've stopped living reactively and started existing intentionally. Now your presence alone speaks louder than any defense could. You don't need to correct misjudgments. They correct themselves over time. You've discovered that truth doesn't need advertisement. It only needs consistency. That's why some feel uneasy around you. You remind them of what they haven't yet mastered: self-certainty. Your energy no longer demands to be understood, it simply exists. And that quiet confidence has become your loudest statement. Number 9. They tried to compete with you before realizing you were in a different system. They thought it was a race, but you were never even on their track. While they were counting numbers, chasing trends, and obsessing over who looked more successful, you were focused on something deeper: substance. They mistook your calm for complacency, not realizing you were operating from an entirely different frequency. You weren't trying to win over people. You were mastering yourself. You were building value that doesn't require validation. Competition only works when both players need the same thing, and that's where they misunderstood you. You were never motivated by comparison. You were driven by calling. Their focus was on being seen. Yours was on being sent. They played the visibility game while you played the longevity game. They craved applause. You sought alignment. That's why you moved differently. Your rhythm didn't match theirs. And it frustrated them because they couldn't figure out how to beat someone who wasn't even playing their game. They tried to measure your worth through attention, forgetting that true impact doesn't need advertisement. You weren't building followers, you were building frequency. You became the kind of person who changes the atmosphere just by showing up. The room shifts, the energy recalibrates, and people sense something beyond personality. They sense presence. That's not something you can fake or compete with. That's something cultivated through quiet obedience, through consistent growth, through choosing purpose over performance. Eventually, they realized competing with you was pointless. You were tapped into a system they couldn't manipulate, the one that rewards alignment, not applause. You're not playing for the moment. You're positioned for the mission. You no longer need to prove who you are because your energy introduces you before you speak. They were fighting for visibility, but you were being established in authenticity. That's the difference between those who chase the spotlight and those who become the light. You didn't win the race. You redefined what winning even means. Number 10, what they called arrogance was actually untrained self-respect. People often mislabel what they don't understand. When you stopped lowering yourself to fit their expectations, they called it arrogance. When you refused to beg, chase, or justify your worth, they whispered that you were prideful or cold. What they failed to see was that it wasn't arrogance at all. It was self-respect in its rawest form. You weren't trying to prove superiority. You were simply refusing to compromise your integrity for the comfort of others. The truth is, most people are conditioned to expect compromise. They've grown used to others bending, apologizing for existence, or shrinking to make space for someone else's ego. So when someone shows up whole, unshakable, and unwilling to negotiate their value, it feels threatening. Your boundaries, your calm, your refusal to chase approval, all of it looked foreign to them. They mistook your alignment with pride because their reality is built on dependence, not independence. Your self-respect became a mirror they didn't want to face. They weren't angry at you. They were uncomfortable seeing a person operate fully without needing their permission or validation. You weren't disrespectful. You were undeniable. Every time they tried to label you, it only highlighted how much they relied on people being malleable. Your strength, clarity, and composure exposed the weak spots in their own character. You've learned that wholeness can be misread as arrogance, but that's not a problem. It's a filter. The people who can't appreciate your presence were never meant to understand it. You don't have to shrink to make others comfortable, and you don't have to explain your worth to anyone who can't see it. What they called arrogance was really the beauty of a person who has stopped asking for permission to exist fully, who refuses to settle for crumbs, and who understands that self-respect is never negotiable. Number 11. You don't have to announce your power. It leaks through your stillness. Real power doesn't need a microphone. It doesn't need noise, spectacle, or proof. When you finally understood who you were, you stopped explaining and started existing. The stillness you carry now isn't emptiness. It's control. You learned the difference between withholding and wasting. You stopped offering explanations to those committed to misunderstanding you and started preserving your energy for those aligned with your vision. Your silence isn't absence, it's authority. You used to think that being quiet made you invisible, that you had to constantly remind people of your worth so they wouldn't forget it. But now you've realized that your presence does all the speaking. The peace you carry, the calm in your tone, the discernment behind your decisions, that's what announces you. It's not in your volume, it's in your vibration. The ones tuned into that frequency feel it instantly, and the ones who don't. They weren't meant to have access in the first place. Stillness has become your strategy. You've learned that when you stop broadcasting your every move, you become unpredictable, and that unpredictability protects your purpose. Not everyone deserves a front row seat to your process. Some people only clap to keep track of your rhythm. You're no longer handing out that privilege. You're moving differently now, quietly, intentionally, and with a sense of spiritual precision that others can't decode. That's why your power unnerves people. They can sense it but can't manipulate it. You've mastered the art of containment, keeping your energy sacred, your plans silent, and your spirit guarded. You're not hiding, you're conserving. Because real power doesn't prove, it permeates. It leaks through stillness, it hums through presence, and it manifests without announcement. You've become the kind of force that doesn't need to say, "I'm here." The room already knows. Number 12. Their betrayal became your branding. It's strange how the same mouths that tried to destroy your reputation ended up spreading your name. They thought they were sabotaging you, but in reality, they were building your visibility. Every lie, every rumor, every attempt to discredit you became free promotion for your purpose. You didn't need a PR team. Your enemies did the marketing. They couldn't stop talking about you, couldn't stop analyzing you, couldn't stop reacting to you. Their obsession turned into exposure. They made you unforgettable. What they didn't realize was that betrayal is one of life's most effective filters. It exposes intention, purifies your circle, and redirects your focus. When they turned on you, you learned who was for you and who was only around for access. Their disloyalty clarified what loyalty truly means, but more importantly, it positioned you for elevation, because betrayal doesn't bury the chosen, it launches them. It forces you to evolve, to rely on something bigger than human validation, and to operate from a level of independence that no gossip can touch. Their gossip couldn't harm you, because truth doesn't need defending. Over time, people saw the contrast between who you are and what was said about you. The stories didn't stick, but your character did. The lies faded, but your growth became undeniable. You became living evidence that divine justice doesn't argue, it reveals. Every attempt to curse you turned into a commercial for your resilience. Now, the same voices that once mocked you mention your name with a mix of awe and regret. You didn't have to clap back or clear the air. Life did it for you. Their betrayal became your branding because what was meant to shame you ended up showcasing your strength. They introduced you as a villain, but God turned you into the proof that purpose can't be slandered, it can only be seen. Number 13, the real secret was never about you. It was about what you carry. For the longest time, people couldn't figure out why you stood out. You weren't the loudest, you weren't chasing recognition, and yet your presence carried a weight that couldn't be explained. What they missed was that your power was never rooted in performance. It was in purpose. The secret wasn't your personality, your skills, or your achievements. It was the divine current running through you. You weren't just gifted. You were chosen to channel something greater. That's why being around you feels different. It's not just you. It's what flows through you. People often confuse talent with calling, but what you have goes beyond ability. You could strip away the titles, the aesthetics, the image, and your essence would still shift the room. That's why some people feel inspired by you, while others feel uncomfortable. You're carrying something they can't quite define. An energy, a clarity, a frequency that exposes the gap between potential and purpose. You don't have to announce it, it announces itself. Over time, those who once overlooked you began to sense that something about you wasn't ordinary. They started treating their proximity to you differently because they realized it wasn't random, it was access. And access to someone carrying divine purpose isn't casual, it's sacred. That's why not everyone who started with you can stay with you. Your growth demanded separation, not because you were better, but because the energy you carry requires protection. Now people see it clearly. It was never about your achievements or image. It was about the assignment. You're not just talented, you're a vessel. And the moment you embraced that truth, everything about your life started aligning with purpose instead of pressure. The real secret was never you trying to be special. It was that you were designed to transmit something only you could carry. And that's why your presence now feels like privilege, because what flows through you isn't common, it's divine. Number 14, they can't unsee it now. The anointing made you unforgettable. There's a moment when pretending not to see someone no longer works, when the evidence of their calling becomes too loud to ignore. That's what's happened with you. The same people who once dismissed your potential, downplayed your presence, and rolled their eyes at your vision are now forced to acknowledge what they tried to deny. They can't explain it, they can't discredit it, and they definitely can't unsee it. Once the veil lifted, the truth about who you really are became undeniable. The anointing on your life revealed itself, not through your words, but through your results, your resilience, and your peace. You didn't fight for this recognition, it found you. For a long time, you existed in plain sight, but unseen, speaking truth into spaces that weren't ready to receive it. You were too early for some, too honest for others. But divine timing doesn't rush. It waits for the world to catch up. When the right moment came, everything that was hidden about you began to shine effortlessly. The shift wasn't loud, it was inevitable. Now, people are seeing you through a new lens. The same traits they mocked, your depth, your discernment, your restraint, are now the very things they admire. You've become the quiet proof that divine selection doesn't seek permission or popularity. It moves in silence, then manifests in power. The anointing doesn't need validation to be real. It only needs time to reveal itself. And now that it has, there's no going back. You've stepped into visibility that can't be undone. You've become unforgettable not because you demanded attention, but because grace marked you differently. Every room you walk into now carries the echo of your authenticity. The eyes that once overlooked you now linger, because they finally understand. You weren't trying to stand out. You were chosen to stand apart. Conclusion. What you've just witnessed is not a story of chance, luck, or superficial success. It is a narrative of alignment, refinement, and divine orchestration. Every moment of silence, every closed door, every whisper behind your back, every test you endured, it all led to this emergence. You weren't overlooked, underestimated, or ignored by accident. You were being prepared, molded, and elevated beyond the comprehension of those who thought they could contain you. The people who doubted you, mocked you, or betrayed you inadvertently became instruments in your growth. Their disbelief became your training. Their gossip became your exposure. Their attempts to stunt you became the foundation for your rise. Your presence, your energy, your calm. It's no longer something people can ignore. You've moved past the need to prove, past the games of popularity, past the attempts of others to define you. Your life now speaks louder than any words ever could. You've become the living evidence that timing is never delayed, that power doesn't need announcement, that integrity and self-respect are forms of strength others can't imitate. You are the proof that divine selection cannot be silenced. It can only manifest when the time is right, in ways that leave the world both in awe and in recognition. Those who once dismissed you, mocked you, or tried to bury you, now watch in quiet disbelief, realizing too late that they were never meant to understand your path. And that's exactly how it should be. Your life isn't meant for their comprehension. It's meant for your destiny. You've become unforgettable, not because of what you did, but because of who you are and what flows through you. You are not ordinary. You are chosen. You are the shift. You are the standard. So if this message resonated with you, if it opened your eyes to the power of purpose, growth, and divine timing, make sure to support this channel. Hit that subscribe button to stay connected, like the video to amplify its reach. Drop a comment to share your thoughts or experiences, and share it with someone who needs to hear this truth today. Your presence here matters, and together we rise, witness, and celebrate the chosen ones in the world. Stay blessed always.